So my name is Erin, Dayton. I'm the Senior Program Specialist with the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. So this morning I'm here to present a little threat brief as well as provide some information on what the ISAC is, the resources and benefits that are available to governments, specific of course today to North Carolina, but across the country as well. So I'll start off by asking if anyone is currently an ISAC member or knows of the ISAC. Okay, pretty good. So some of this will be familiar to those that are already members. And to individuals that aren't members, please feel free to contact myself. I'll leave my contact information on the screen today, or to grab me before I have to catch a flight back to Albany. We're located in upstate New York, so I'm enjoying the weather while I can while I'm down here. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the ISAC or what it is, the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center is federally funded through the Department of Homeland Security to be the key cybersecurity resource for prevention, protection, response, and recovery on behalf of the U.S. state, local, tribal, and territorial government entities. So who does that include and who our membership is currently? Our membership is made up of all 56 U.S. states and territories, so the state of North Carolina, of course, is a member. All 78 federally recognized fusion centers and more than 1,000 local governments, including public education entities, tribal nations, etc. So obviously, as all of you know, to have 1,000 local governments sounds pretty small, considering the amount that are across the country. However, that 1,000 number counts for about 47% of the population. So we have all major capital cities, a lot of metropolitan areas, things like that. So included in that, and who can be members, that includes cities, counties, port authorities, police departments, public education entities, so whether that be K-12 school districts or higher education entities, local government, connected community colleges or state education, colleges or universities, port authorities, transit authorities, anything along those lines is eligible to be an ISAC member. So in terms of cybersecurity, why is it that threats, trends, emerging actors, why are they interested in government? Why are they interested in each and every one of the entities that you all are associated with today? Well, it's pretty simple. Criminals are looking for data, and everyone in this room has a lot of it. We're the individuals that are safeguarding the most PII available. And so as you can see, that's going to include a social security number, which as we know is pretty much the key identification for each and every one of us to do anything, to get medical records, to apply for a mortgage, to apply for a credit card. Sometimes that's all that takes to move forward with any sort of identity theft. And each and every one of those of the counties have that information, tax information as well. I know another session right now is going on as it relates to CGIS, so obviously fingerprints, probational hearing information, anything along the lines of law enforcement, counties or state governments certainly are going to have all that information as well. Your driver's license, your medical records, some local governments are still tied to some sort of agency that has HIPAA laws associated with it, so a lot of really sensitive information is housed by local governments, and it's our job to take care of that information and to really work to safeguard it on behalf of, even yourself. I'm sure some of you probably live in the counties or cities that you work in. So affected entities and how that sort of breaks out, I break it out in this way. So states, obviously the state is kind of the overarching umbrella, and then within the states are state agencies. Additionally, law enforcement, that can be broken out into state police, and then all of those entities underneath that, so Department of Corrections, etc. Local police, of course. Education, broken out into K-12 school districts, community colleges, as well as state universities, and then critical infrastructure, which has been a huge topic for 2016, and that's broken out, hospitals, airports, mass transit, port authorities. A lot of these tie back to local governments. And so we really need to do everything that we can to make sure that that information is protected and held on to accordingly. So vulnerabilities, exactly how is it that actors and hacktivists are looking to get into your system? How are they getting in? What vulnerabilities are they exploiting in order to make their way into their system and then retrieve the data that they're looking to either exfiltrate or just simply analyze and take bits and pieces that they want for their own, their own nature. So content management systems is a huge vulnerability. We see, which I'll talk about in a little bit, the ISAC has free incident response available to local governments, any membership, so take advantage of that. I'll talk a little bit more about it later. So through our incident response, we see that about 99 to almost 100% of cases that come through our door are based on unpatched or out-of-date systems. So one of those would be including content management systems. Additionally, plugins. So let's say you think everything's running really smoothly, you're up to date on your content management systems, everything's up to date, it's patched. Well, what about the 25 plugins that you're running, on WordPress or Drupal? So you need to be sure to really take a look at each of those items and make sure that they're all up to date and all patched in a very timely manner. As well as servers and web programming language, same goes for them. So making sure that each of these items are up to date and patched. And I know that that sounds really trivial. And so a lot of people talk to us at the ISAC and they say, what do we do? What do we buy, to make our systems really secure and make sure nobody gets in? And we said that it pretty much just starts with patching and running up-to-date versions, which is a really, really boring answer. Everyone wants kind of that $1 million purchase and everything's going to go away. You don't have to task someone with updating your systems and things like that. But it's a boring answer, but it's the answer that really, that we've seen makes the biggest difference. And then of course phishing, which is of no surprise to anyone in this room. I'm sure everyone's gotten phishing emails since they started having a Gmail account. But it's developed really fully, and now the difficulty in phishing becomes not only the education of the end user, but additionally the fact that these phishing emails, spear phishing campaigns, are incredibly well written. They're very credible. They appear as though they're coming from a very respectable source, maybe someone even internal to your organization, or it seems as though it's coming from your bank. So these individuals that are sending these emails are very well informed on you as a human being. They're collecting some sort of metadata on you to be able to pull information and know the bank that you use, or that you draw from a certain ATM, and then they're going to communicate with you on behalf of that organization, so they know that that's what's going to trigger you to maybe sign in and hand over your username and your password. So years ago, we would receive phishing emails and it was very, very clear that it wasn't coming from a trusted source. It was half written in code, half written in broken English. Clear that it was coming probably from Russia or Chinese or something like that. And now that's not the case at all. They're really, really well written, and they're very, very difficult to spot. So, in my position, I get to work with some really, really, really incredible people. And so I was working with the city of Atlanta, they're one of our members, and I was talking to them, and one of the guys I work with there said that he came up with this sort of analogy to break out vulnerability and risk to management. As many of you know, probably discussing this with management is a little bit difficult at times, and sort of breaking out this information into digestible pieces and allowing it for something that everyone can understand can be difficult. So the gentleman that I work with, he's a brilliant guy down in the city of Atlanta, and so he told me that the way he describes it is as a house. So the house would be your network for your government, and then all of these vulnerabilities and risks are the different entrances into the house. So a level 1 vulnerability, a high-risk vulnerability, right, like leaving your back door unlocked, or your front door unlocked, your front door open, having a cracked window, a totally open window, no screen in place, things like that. So he said that having those and saying, if we can lock our front door, that's step 1. We can shut our windows, that's step 2, right? If we can have a deadbolt on our back and front door, that's step 3. So doing these steps to eliminate a level 1 vulnerability is great. Level 2 would be next on your list. So that means that you have, an open window on the second floor. Takes someone, a criminal, a lot more effort to climb up to the second floor to let themselves in and get what they want. And then additionally, let's say at the house there's a ladder outside. Well, if everything's locked on the first floor, that level 2 vulnerability up on the second floor, which is the open window, becomes a lot more accessible to a criminal. And so the ladder would be considered an exploit, so some sort of exploit kit that would then run to find these vulnerabilities and exploit each of them. So this is a good, I think, visual representation of what it is that we're facing. I know sometimes criminal, cybercrime and physical crime can seem pretty separate, but the reality is doing simple things like locking your door, keeping your windows closed and locked, things like that applies very similarly to your network as well. So who are behind these threats? Well, we break it out into 3 separate categories, the first being hacktivist organizations, second being cyber criminals, and the third being nation states. Hacktivists, I'm sure many of you have obviously heard about Anonymous. It's been no surprise. They like to find themselves in the news quite often. So what is it exactly that motivates hacktivist organizations, whether it's the large ones like Anonymous or smaller sects or even lone individuals that are motivated by this? A lot of times it's social, political, or some sort of ideological agenda that they're interested in. They're very opportunistic as well as targeted. So again, Anonymous is a huge organization, a lot of dedicated individuals that work for Anonymous, and they're always interested in some sort of ideological issue that they have. So they see maybe an allegation of police misconduct, and they want to go after that police department. Or obviously off Wall Street, we saw a lot of that a couple of years ago as well. So what are they interested in, and additionally, how are they getting it? So obviously DDoS attacks, which is just a lot of, more of an annoyance, but a lot of times for local governments that can hinder the income that's coming into you. If you're paying water bills online or any sort of electrical grid that might tie back to local governments, you have a lot of downtime. If they're constantly running a DDoS attack against you, your website's down. You're not getting money through the door if somebody's paying their water bill or what have you. Additionally, a system compromise or a web defacement. Again, web defacements certainly can hinder business, but it's more of an annoyance. They like to state claim, they like to put some information up on there. Recently we saw them have an attack called Op Beast, which was based on states that didn't have strict bestiality laws. So they went after a lot of states, and then they would deface their websites and put some sort of inappropriate imagery on the website as well, along with their logo. So they want to promote what it is that they feel strongly about, as well as promote their organization as well. Does anyone know what doxing is? So doxing in and of itself is the release of personal information without the person being compliant, of course. So we saw in 2015 a lot of doxing associated with allegations of police misconduct. So examples of, like I said, 2015 was a huge year for that, very popular, a lot going on in the news as it related to that. So organizations like Anonymous or smaller organizations or sects broken off of that would focus or target their time on local governments where allegations of police misconduct existed. They would then compromise their system or do a phishing attack, get in there and be able to pull out a lot of PII based on the police officer, and then post it for public consumption. So one even really scary tactic that we saw post, it was related to, I believe, a LA police officer. He got some information on him, so his badge number, his duty license number, as well as his car off-duty, that license plate number, his home address, as well as posting the address of his children's school. So really scary, and although some may claim that, well, we're just putting information out there, we're not doing anything, we didn't kidnap the child or we didn't hit his vehicle or anything along those lines, the reality is posting information like that for public consumption allows for individuals to then take that information and go very far with it. I don't know about any of you, but my brother-in-law is a police officer for our local police department in my city. So I definitely am not interested in having his information posted online and someone showing up to my sister's house, knocking on the door, and God forbid taking her or putting a bullet in her head. So clearly defending our local PD, whether that's held in the local government itself or held specific in the police department infrastructure, is incredibly important. Like I said, although they're just posting it and then allowing for other people to decide what they want to do with it, that's a huge problem and a big issue. So some hacktivist organizations that we see, Viking them up on your right-hand side. They're a huge organization, kind of ebbs and flows as it relates to local governments. In 2015, from March to July, they claimed 74 DDoS attacks against state and local governments successfully, and it affected 34 states. So, like I said, they like to ebb and flow. They kind of come up and come down. They obviously were at their height, March to July, and just last month, we had monthly threat brief opportunities for our membership, and so we reported out that we've seen activity kind of come back up as it relates to Vikingdom and state and local governments as well. So probably keep an eye out for them as they'll come through. And then this other gentleman, Randall Charles Tucker, also known as the Bitcoin Baron if anyone was affected by him. Similar sort of tactics, had 10 successful DDoS attacks in March of 2015. But he's really more of an example. Luckily, he's been arrested, as you can tell by the pictures, so that's great news for everyone. He's a huge, huge nuisance. But this is a good example of cyber criminals or hacktivists that don't necessarily have this tactical or incredible intelligence as it relates to the technology industry. This gentleman was just buying software that would automate DDoS attacks or exploit kits that would identify vulnerabilities that maybe he could get a friend to exploit or then download or purchase some other sort of kit that could exploit it. So it's just a real example of the fact that just simply protecting yourself means that you're way ahead of the game, especially from individuals like himself who don't really know what they're doing. They're just using tools, Shodan, which is really like a Google for hackers. He would find that, identify vulnerabilities, or find open webcams or things like that and exploit each of those items as well. So it doesn't take a genius to do these things. Really protecting yourself on a minimal level is kind of the first step. So this is another great example of protecting yourself on the ground level. Great Falls, Montana. I'm sure no one's heard of it because it's very small. And what happened in Great Falls, Montana was that a couple of preteens from Eastern Europe were on this site called Shodan, and they identified that there was a vulnerability in the emergency alert system that was being run by the city of Great Falls, Montana. The vulnerability was that they never changed their default password. So they thought of a really great idea, and they would just call the city and say, hey, you bought this from us a couple of years ago, this emergency alert system, we gotta run an update on it, just check for vulnerabilities. If you could just give us your username and password, we'll take care of it, no big deal. Well, surprise, they gave everything. And so these individuals, all the way from Eastern Europe, were able to take over the emergency alert system in Great Falls, Montana. So they decided to, as you can imagine, two preteens, alert that bodies of the dead were rising from their graves. Don't attempt to apprehend these bodies, they could be dangerous. A little Grateful Dead reference there, Walking Dead. And so obviously this is funny, it's a joke, everyone knew it was a joke, but it went over, obviously, television stopped people from watching, Maury Povich or whatever during the day. The radio systems as well as any sort of alert systems that were out in the streets. So again, it's funny, it's a joke, they all knew about it, pretty open gun laws in Montana, so not a big deal. But, what's frightening is that, obviously I live in upstate New York, about 3 hours from New York City, where there's a lot of terror threats always. And so my concern is that New York City doesn't do a good job of maintaining or handling their emergency alert system, and someone says that, you know, there's a dirty bomb on the subway, or there's a terror threat going on in the subway, there's mass panic, or maybe there is a terror attack going on, they take over the emergency alert system and they say everything's fine, don't worry, it was a test, but it's actually not. So this, of course, again, it's a joke, it wasn't a big deal, but it does identify the fact that these issues are real and can be taken, you know, far too severe if that happens. I'm just going to try and plug this in really quick. Okay, so next up is cyber criminals. So cyber criminals are obviously after different motivations, no surprise, financial motivations, same as a lot of physical crime. They have varying levels of expertise, just as I talked about with the Bitcoin Baron, you know, kind of stems from no expertise whatsoever to individuals that may have, you know, gone to school for information security or what have you, and they're very tactical and able to use their skill set to get exactly what it is that they want. And they also are interested in power control. So sometimes you'll see cyber criminals that will exploit a vulnerability, be able to exfiltrate some data, and they won't even do anything with it, but then they'll tell the organization, hey, I was able to get in your system and here's what I got. And they really like to be able to state that, you know, they were able to have more control over their system remotely than you do in, you know, in your own building. So, in regards to cyber criminals, there's a couple of different ways, I mean realistically endless ways, that they're able to get into your system or exfiltrate your data. So one of them is Shifu. It's a banking Trojan, very similar to Drydex. It's a little bit upgraded in that it's resistant to anti-malware, which is no good for any of us. And right now it's targeting banking customers in the UK and in Japan. The only difference, really, as it relates to cybercrime and physical crime, is that physical crime, for someone to rob me, they have to be in my neighborhood, they have to be on my street, they have to be at my house. But as it relates to cybercrime, if they're in the UK or they're in Japan, and that's where a lot of this is focused right now, they can just as easily be in our neighborhood, you know, which everyone is connected on the internet. We're all in each other's neighborhood, so it's a global neighborhood. You can't really you know, kick anyone out of it. So Drydex leverages macros in Microsoft Office. So I don't know about any of you, but I'm always annoyed when that little yellow bar pops up, enable macros in your Excel or Word document, and all you want to do is just click out of it so it closes and you have a nice clean image to take a look at. Well, sometimes when you do that, if your machine is infected, you are then downloading Drydex onto your computer, infecting your machine with malware. And then their main interest is compromising banking credentials as well as PII, so either they're then selling those banking credentials or PII, or using it themselves to make purchases as well. And then Upatra or Dyer makes use of phishing emails. So as I was talking about earlier, phishing emails can come very well crafted, very credible, and make you really not at all, even if you've been highly educated on phishing, think anything of it. So this is an example of a phishing email that contained a Dyer infection, and it's from Wells Fargo. So the individual that received this probably uses Wells Fargo as their bank, or maybe their retirement, 401k, and so they receive the email, And I know it's pretty small there, but if you hover over the here link, it clearly states that it's not taking you to Wells Fargo at all. It's taking you to another link, which is then going to download dire onto your machine, infect your machine, and spread throughout your network as well. Malvertising is something we've seen in 2016, and it's been a huge uptick, huge uprising as well. And it's been on the news quite a bit because organizations that are really, really credible, New York Times, Huffington Post, that you would never imagine would be hosting this on their site, it's not their fault, but have been affected by this malvertising campaign, and thus need to notify the public and let them know that that they're experiencing this issue. Don't click on the advertisements or even visit the site. So the way that malvertising works, obviously, malvertising is broken out into malware and advertising. So all you need to do is visit a web page that has been taken over by malvertising. You're going to see a site, you see the site pop up, and it's going to contain some sort of banner or pop-up ad. For me, it would be shoes, probably. And then it would look something probably, on the bottom there. Unfortunately, it won't label itself as malvertising, but that's mainly what it would look like on your screen. And then you would end up being redirected to an exploit landing page. Now, the trick with malvertising is that you don't even need to click on that link or click on that picture or that shoe in order to be affected. Just visiting the site can do that to you. So the site itself, as well as the malvertisement, is running code behind it to move you to an exploit page that will then download malware and affect your machine. So unfortunately, at moments like this, there's no way that you can identify things like that. But again, being sure that you are taking the necessary precautions at the ground level so that if you are hit with this, they can't go any further into your system. They can't exploit any vulnerabilities because there are none to exploit internally. And then, of course, once the malware is installed, what is it that they're interested in getting, or what sort of end result does that look like? And it looks like having full access to the machine. Maybe they can remotely perform, things on your computer from wherever they are, data exfiltration, as well as using your machine as a botnet. And of course, ransomware, which I know another session talked about. So if any of you attended this is something that's not bad to hear a couple of times. We've already heard about it quite a bit in 2016. We've seen a huge uptick in it. In 2015, we saw a large majority of local police departments getting hit with any sort of crypto wall or crypto locker or Tesla Crypt, which is a newer version, and they just keep kind of redeveloping themselves and upgrading. So phishing emails is usually the attack vector as to how they are exfiltrating. They will then move forward, encrypt all of your personal files, hard drive, file shares, etc. They will let you know that they've done this, which is really nice of them. So they'll give you a nice little pop-up, and then they'll perform and outline instructions for you on how to move forward with paying them. Here's how you can get your files back. They'll demand typically somewhere between, and we've seen this increase so far in 2016, but they were demanding about $200 to $600 via Bitcoin in order to get the decryption key back and thus have your files. Payment must be made typically within 72 to 100 hours. It often increases if you don't pay in a certain period of time. Now the difficulty is, ideally we want to say, don't do it. Don't pay them, don't pay the criminal, don't fuel the machine. But we know that that's obviously not realistic in some cases. But the difficulty ends up being that once they identify that you are willing to pay and that you probably aren't running backups, they will just hit you the next day or next week or what have you. So like I said, in 2015, we saw a lot of local police departments getting hit with this because cybercriminals, they're not stupid. They also have a lot of tools to make them smarter. And so they know that local governments, or governments in general, have a lot of time and difficulty focused on procurement. Is that a surprise to anyone in this room? No? And budget. So they're aware of this, so they were focused on local police departments that lack any sort of mature critical infrastructure and they were easily able to hit them with these phishing emails and hold them for ransom. Typically, the police departments were not running backup, so they had no option but to pay the ransom in order to get their files back. But I just want to remind everyone that we're dealing with criminals, so they might not actually give you the key after you pay. So there's a lot that's up in the air as it comes to ransomware. Here's, pay me your 600 Bitcoins and I'll return the decryption key. Well, they're criminals, so they might not do that, and then you're just out of luck. Or you do that and they very nicely give you your files back, and then they just hit you again next week because they know that there's not a lot of budget and that procurement takes a lot of time. So you probably haven't securely, situated yourself to increase your posture within a week of them attacking you again. And another example, this again was huge news in 2016 already, the Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital. So Hollywood Presbyterian was hit with a new form, upgraded version of ransomware called Lockheed. No surprise, it's been attributed to an IP coming out of Russia. And so the hospital was hit with ransomware. It was a very unique situation. The ransom was about $17,000. So that means that they were targeted, because most ransomware is run just sort of on a consistent basis, much like a DDoS attack. And so for the most part, if it's run on that sort of outlet and just consistently being run to pick up vulnerabilities and hit those systems, it's just going to shoot out the same dollar amount to be spit back. So this was a unique attack. It was obviously, they were aware of the profit that they could potentially gain, and they weren't wrong. They were paid their $17,000 in Bitcoins. And so what happened was the hospital itself obviously had such issue with not having access to their files, they had to transport patients to different hospitals to receive care. So something you don't really think about, but all of our information, for the most part, as it comes to medical records, are online. They're saved somewhere, and so if your doctor now comes into your room, they have a little iPad or a small computer, they take all of the notes down, so all of that becomes affected and they can't reach those items. We had our previous CEO for the company I worked for said that she didn't care if you knew her blood type, but she cared if you could change it. So if someone can get into the system and change my blood type, or if you are holding the files that have information on my blood type and I go to that hospital and I need a blood transfusion, that's a huge problem, really big issue. So is anyone in this room a college basketball fan? I feel like I'm in like the state of college basketball. So I'm a huge college basketball fan. Duke is my team. I don't know if it's good or bad here.
That's unfortunate.
Yes, no? Oh, I got one thumbs up. Yes, okay, so love college basketball, huge college basketball fan. So during the tournament in March, I was flying out to Denver to speak at a conference, and because the internet's so incredible, I was able to watch games on my phone while I was flying. So I was watching a game, and a commercial came on, and it was from BAE Systems. And the commercial was just two individuals, a man and a woman, sitting, having a conversation. And so the gentleman was asking the woman, why, what happens? What happens if we get hit and we have data exfiltration or we can't access our files or whatever? And so she said, we have to go back to using pen and paper. So they continue their conversation. And then at the end of the conversation, he asks the woman, why is it that these criminals or hacktivists or actors do hit our organizations? And she said, because they know we can't operate on pen and paper. And that's a perfect example of what's happening with the hospital. They got hit, they had to pay the ransom because they simply cannot, no longer in 2016, operate on pen and paper. It's just not a feasible option anymore. We can't go back. We're so far ahead that we can't just go back and decide to now start handwriting scripts and prescriptions and things like that. It's just not going to work anymore. So additionally, we have nation-state actors, which is sort of a category in and of itself. These individuals are trained. Typically, they're obviously very skilled, technically savvy, and a lot of times they're trained by the nation that is interested in having them do the work on their behalf. So they're focused mainly on political leverage, competitive insight, having access to and exfiltrating intellectual property, as well as cyber warfare. So a good example of this was late 2015, early 2016, a Ukraine airport was shut down because of Russia getting into their system and kind of locking out of their network. So they had some forensics done, obviously did exactly what they could to get information and some indicators of compromise. They then tied it to an attack that occurred in late 2015 where 80,000 customers lost power for 6 hours, and that again, all of that wrapped up into one I attributed to Russia. So obviously Russia was attacking Ukraine, their critical infrastructure, they were able to shut down their airport, as well as power for long periods of time. They were using a black energy malware, which we've seen sort of float outside of critical infrastructure. Originally, when it came out, it appeared as though it was only focused on critical infrastructure. Unfortunately, it seemed to kind of spread itself outward of that. Difficulty with black energy malware is that it's able to spread offline. So a lot of times it's used in a USB port, or USB drive. So you would pop it into this computer, even if you're offline, there's no Wi-Fi connection, etc. It's still able to spread itself on the network. And additionally, it has a wipe ability. So if you are trying to get forensics on the image, it's going to completely wipe itself after it's done its task. Additionally, we've seen a lot of issues and system compromises as it relates to educational entities. And so some of this is nation states that are interested in universities or colleges that are focused on research and development, whether that be specific to the university or furthermore kind of on behalf of the US government, federal government, military agencies, etc. Obviously, they're interested in intellectual property, pulling some of that information out, getting up to date on what it is that we're looking to develop so that either they can take it and move forward with the development of it and put it out before us and make a profit off of it, or they're just interested in new military developments that we have to prepare themselves to combat that we may potentially have against them. And then additionally, it's been found, and again of no surprise, that educational entities are pretty easy targets. And the reason that that's true is because they're really open. Networks are open. They want to have a free learning experience, which I appreciate. But it also means that there's a lot that you're leaving yourself up to as well. So you think about, again, a lot of colleges and large universities in the state of North Carolina. How many students one professor probably has? I mean, hundreds, potentially even thousands at certain universities, depending on how many classes they teach. So if I sent an email to a teacher, somehow got their email address, again, because it's so open and honest, they put a lot of information online, teachers' information, professors' name, email, phone number, room that they work out of, etc. So I find that, I send them a note, say, hey, I'm in your general 101 freshman topics class. Here's that paper. I told you it was going to be late. I'm sorry. Here's the attachment. They don't know that Erin Dayton isn't a student of theirs. They're probably going to open the attachment, and potentially it's then Dridex or Patra or etc. So that has been a huge issue that we've seen come through educational entities and the difficulties that they're experiencing there. So I've told you a couple of scary things maybe, but the reality is that everyone makes mistakes. So this gentleman, Prince William, posted this really nice picture of himself on his Facebook. I get it, he looks really handsome. But what he didn't realize is that in the top corner of the picture, he posted the username, password, credentials for the Royal Airport system. So if this guy can make a mistake, I think everybody in this room can. We all have a little leeway when it comes to that. So obviously this picture is laughable. It's not very funny. I hope they changed the username and password after they took this picture down. Of course, better he than I, because he, of course, has someone watching his every move every 10 seconds. So once he posted it as his profile picture, it was taken down about 10 seconds later. But everybody makes mistakes, so the trick really is to learn from those mistakes and better secure yourself and create a better posture moving forward. So after I've told you all the scary stuff, I'll tell you more about the MS ISAC and what it is that we can do for the local governments in North Carolina. So the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center is a no-cost, no-obligation membership. So there's no cost associated with what I'm going to talk about. We have a 24/7 security operations center. We're located, as I said, upstate New York, right outside of Albany, if anyone's familiar with the area. If you're ever up there for whatever reason, maybe trying to escape the hot summer down here, feel free to visit us. So we consider our security operations center as a central location for each and every one of you to report any sort of cyber incident, or additionally just use us. I like to tell our members, use us as an information security help desk. So all we do is work with state, local, tribal, and territorial entities. So a phone call or a question that comes in from one local government is probably a very similar question to what you may ask, or someone else may ask. So we have really prepared answers because we've heard these questions over and over again, and we don't want any of you in here to have to reinvent the wheel or feel alone, so just give us a call and we're happy to either give you an answer, and if not, we're happy to point you in the right direction as well. So through our Security Operations Center, we provide support for network monitoring, research, and analysis. We also do analysis and monitoring of threats, vulnerabilities, and attacks, which is obviously what I talked about a little bit this morning. And additionally, we're always reporting out on cyber alerts and advisories, web defacements, account compromises, hacked notifications, etc. So if a local government in here were to be affected or targeted by Anonymous, let's say, you could contact us. We could follow Anonymous on your behalf and present you with any sort of information, threat analysis that we've dredged up and taken a look at. So if you're interested and not already a member, there's no cost to being a member. There's a phone number for our Security Operations Center as well as an email address. We also have, as I mentioned earlier, free incident response. So if you don't want to listen to me, haven't been listening to me, just listen to me for 1 second, please take advantage of this and remember this when you leave today. So if you are ever compromised, facing any sort of issue, please contact us. It is free. It's free. It's not going to change at any point in time. If an incident is so severe that we need to send a team on site, it still is no cost to you. So we have done that. We've luckily not had to do it since about 2013. Most of the work we can do remotely. We have a secure FTP server you can upload logs to. We have a forensic image guide if you have any issues that you want to ship us that. And then additionally, we're just on the phone. So if you have any issues creating a duplicate image and you need some help, one of our incident response experts will talk to you on the phone and walk you through the process so you can get it to us. So the incident response that we have, like I said, it includes on-site assistance if necessary. Additionally, if you're experiencing an attack when you call me, we can have a vulnerability assessment run on your system, as well as do a pen test on the spot in order to identify exactly where it is that the vulnerabilities exist, how is it that the attacker is getting into your system, and then in follow-up do malware analysis, network forensics, log analysis, do any sort of statistical data analysis as well, penetration testing, which I said, as well as mitigation recommendations. So after the incident itself, once it's closed out, we've taken care of everything, we're going to provide a report to you that writes out exactly what we did, what we identified, if there was any sort of data exfiltration, what was that, and then provide mitigation recommendations to hopefully make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. We also are able to monitor your IP range and domain space for no cost to you. So this is through our Security Operations Center. So if you're a member, I manage all of our members in the state of North Carolina, so you would talk to me. But when you sign up, I would communicate with you and let you know to then provide your IP range and domain space if you're interested. Again, no cost associated with this. It's not invasive. It's not going to show up on your system as a scan. It's more of a passive monitoring. So IPs, if you were to provide your IP range to us, we would just make sure that if we knew that your particular IP was communicating with a command and control server that was known malicious, we would obviously identify that and send that out to you as an alert. And so we also do our own network monitoring. across the country. We currently monitor, I believe, about 43 states. We have the initiative and the funding from DHS to move forward in monitoring all 56 U.S. states and territories, which we're on our way to close out by 2016. So through that, we get a lot of indicators of compromise. And so if your IP is associated with any sort of indicator of compromise we're pulling out of our incident response that we're getting, or additionally through our network monitoring, we're also going to obviously let you know as well. And then additionally, we pay premium rates for services and alerts like Spam House. So as opposed to your organization needing to pay a membership in order to receive Spam House notifications, we pay that premium rate for you so that we can just redistribute it out to our membership. And then we also will do domain monitoring. So if you provide your domains to us as well, we will then notify you on compromised user credentials. So we're constantly running scripts on sites like Pastebin, so maybe there's been a data dump and a combination of username and a password that's been associated with your organization is listed on there. We're going to let you know about that as well. And then additionally, we have a vulnerability management program, which I'll talk about here. So again, this is based off the domains that you would provide to us. And every Friday afternoon, we'll run a scripted GET request, essentially. So like I said, it's non-invasive, not going to show up on your system as a scam. You don't need to whitelist any IP or anything like that. And then we're going to pull down information, same as what we would get from publicly visiting your website, like server type and version, content management system, as well as web programming language. And then we're going to send out to you on a monthly basis this compiled information. And so one report would be non-vulnerable systems, meaning each of these items are up to date. This website running this WordPress application is up to date. You're running the most current version. And then conversely, there's a file that would be vulnerable systems, meaning that identified vulnerabilities list in this particular domain. Maybe you're running out of date Drupal, something like that. So just good information to report out on. And then probably just throw into your next patch cycle if you're able to do that as well. I'm running pretty tight on time, so I'll just run through this really quick. We also have a malicious code analysis platform you can take advantage of. This really would just allow you as an organization to privately analyze malware. As I said, our incident response team can do this on your behalf of your organization. But if you have larger teams or counties or cities that have more ability to take on something like this, or just interest, please feel free to let us know. We're happy to provide that to you as well. Private sandbox environment, so as opposed to using a site like VirusTotal, you're able to analyze malware privately. We also have Soldier Edge, which is a machine-to-machine indicator transfer via Styx taxi format. So every Monday we send out a top attacking IPs and domains report. A lot of individuals would take that information and immediately feed it, into their IDS or something like that and blacklist each of those IPs that we provide. This is a way to absorb that information automatically. So then you don't need to do it all manually. We also send out a lot of communications and products. So as I talked about through our SOC, we have a lot of alerts and advisories. We send out advisories on vulnerabilities that would allow for remote code execution. If there's any sort of uptick in information, we're going to probably create some sort of intel paper or white paper as it relates to that. So, a high increase in ransomware, that would be something we would write about and then send it out to membership as well, just to keep everyone on top of what it is that we're seeing through the Security Operations Center and what's affecting SLTT entities as well. We do have fee-based services. Again, this is fee-based, so it's not free. I just want to make that known. So network monitoring, managed security services, pen testing, phishing engagements, etc. That's the unimportant part of all of this. We have an annual meeting every year. This year it's in San Antonio, Texas. There is no fee for registration. So if anyone is currently a member, this is information to you. If anyone's not currently a member, if you join, you're more than happy to attend this conference. We have a lot of breakout sessions, keynote speakers. It's it's completely SLTT focused across the country. People talk about best practices, what they're doing with our communications, how it's best used internally to secure their infrastructure. Again, registration's no cost to you. To attend the conference, it's no cost, but obviously you would have to pay travel and lodging as well. So what can you do? Patch, running up-to-date software, making sure that you're patching. Like I said, 99% of the incidents that we handle every single year are based on unpatched or out-of-date applications. Training, so having education available to your users to let them know what a phishing email looks like, how to identify it, hover over the link instead of clicking on it, making sure that it's taking you to the right site, copy and paste information into your browser instead of just clicking on it, things like that. Running backups so that if you are hit with a ransomware attack that you can restore your system to previous use, you don't have to pay the ransom and to be affected negatively in that way. Hardening systems, running updated policies, complying with each of those policies. And sort of this outlines that. So at the heart of all of this is education. And then additionally moving forward and preventing attacks as well as protecting yourself from them, responding to them as well as recovering. So preventing, having some sort of IDS or IPS in place, patching obviously, protecting your systems, so that may be through data storage or having a multi-factor authentication in line with your agency. Responding, so either having an incident response team in-house, which I know is difficult for governments because we're small. So having a plan in place for incident response, whether it's go to the ISAC, that's fine with us if you want to do that, and having policies and procedures in place, and then additionally recovery. So being able to prepare for a situation like this, running tabletop exercises, and just knowing how to move forward if something like this were to occur. Using the critical security controls, so some of you may be familiar with these previously as the SANS Top 20. So they are now the CIS critical security controls. They're great best practices to use, 20 steps. There's a lot of bullets in between each step, so I will say that. But this is no cost, it's freely downloadable. So taking this and working through your network infrastructure to make sure you are as compliant and as secure as possible before we start as well. Okay, and that is it for me. Sorry I ran a little long, everybody. Again, my name is Erin, Dayton. I'm a senior program specialist and manage all of our members in North Carolina. And there's my phone number and email address. If anyone wants to contact me, become a member, have any questions, feel free to do so. Does anyone have any questions?